I want to tell you a story. It's a story of survival, and yet happened inside a game. But it uncovers a pretty chilling truth about our own world and just how fast it can all come crashing down. It all started so quietly, just a simple little problem. The fields, they looked fine, but they weren't actually producing anything. At first, it seemed like, no big deal, because that's how these things always start, right? Not with some huge explosion, but with a tiny problem that everyone's just a little too busy to pay attention to. It's fine right up until the moment it's not. And then things escalated. They escalated fast. What was kind of a joke on Monday was a real crisis by Wednesday. By Friday, the baker, the guy who literally makes the town's food, was out of business. And by the end of the week, it was just me staring at my last piece of bread. So, let's break this down. How does a world just fall apart? Well, it starts with what I call the quiet leak. Because disasters, they almost never shout when they arrive. Before all this, life was just normal, comfortable. It was kind of like having a full fridge at home. You don't really think about the supply chains or the farms that keep it full. You just open the door and the food's there. You just assume it's always going to be there. And that was our first mistake. And this is the absolute core of it. A famine isn't like a big sudden shipwreck. No, it's more like a slow leak in a boat. At first, you feel a little water on your feet and you think it's nothing. Then it's up to your ankles. And by the time you finally realize the boat is actually sinking, you are in some serious, serious trouble. Okay, so that brings us to the next phase. This is when the tower itself starts to shake. That quiet leak isn't so quiet anymore. It's become a real crack in the foundation. The best way to picture it is like a Jenga tower. These medieval systems, and honestly a lot of our modern ones too, are way more fragile than we think. You can pull out one block, like say the wheat supply, and the tower might hold, but now the whole thing is unstable. It's just wobbling. And where do you see that wobble first? The economy. The price of bread went from 1 coin to 3 coins to, by day 5, the baker just stopped putting up a price. And you know what it means when a price disappears, right? It means it's so high you can't even say it out loud. The whole idea of value is just breaking. And this is when people's behavior starts to change. People stop thinking like a community and start thinking only about themselves. The mill locks its doors, the big storage houses bolt their gates. Suddenly grain isn't food anymore. It's safety, it's survival. And fear? Fear just moves a whole lot faster than any truth. Which leads us to the most important moment in this whole story. The moment a huge systemic problem becomes a very personal, moral choice. So, this is it. This is where our survivor ended up, down to literally the last dregs of energy. See, when you're that desperate, your whole world shrinks. Tomorrow doesn't matter. All that matters is the gnawing hunger in your stomach right now. And then you see it, a neighbor's barn. You know there's grain in there. So here's the choice. I can break down that door and I get to eat tonight. I survive. But then what happens tomorrow? What happens when someone stronger comes to break down my door? And that's the big realization. What is a village? What is a community? It's not just a bunch of buildings, it's an agreement. It's a group of people all agreeing not to steal from each other. The second you break that agreement, it's not a village anymore. It's just chaos. And so he turned around and he walked away. Okay, so choosing not to steal was one thing, but now we had to figure out another way to survive. This is about the pivot, about shifting from the old way of thinking to a totally new strategy that actually worked. And what's really fascinating is this insight. The physical pain from hunger, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the psychological pain, the uncertainty of not knowing when or if this would ever end. That feeling is so much heavier. It just crushes you. So, here's the playbook he came up with. First, diversify. The wheat is gone? Fine. Find potatoes, carrots, fish, anything else. Second, conserve every bit of energy. Every single move has a cost. Third, and this one is brilliant, trade things that aren't food. An iron shovel for a bag of carrots. It keeps the economy alive. And last, and maybe most important, keep your alliances. So really, the whole strategy comes down to this. While everyone else was locking away their assets, their grain, their bread, the real wealth was in the things that were kept open. Things like relationships, trust, and useful tools. Food will keep you alive for a day, sure, but alliances, they're the ones who keep you safe. So, after all that, what's the big lesson? What's the one thing that sticks with you long after the hunger is gone? It turns out bread was never just food. It was the glue, the social glue. It was the reason people talked, traded, and trusted each other. And when that one simple thing disappeared, everything else just started to fall apart. That's why when the famine finally ended and the bread came back, there wasn't some big party. Nobody cheered. There was just a quiet, collective exhale, a sense of relief, because everyone had seen it now. They'd seen just how incredibly thin the line is between a community and total collapse. And that leaves us with one final, pretty sobering idea. Having a full field or a full pantry or a stable society, that doesn't actually mean you're safe. All it means is that the test hasn't started yet. So, I'll leave you with that question. If you found yourself in that village and you were standing at that door, what would you do? Hoard, trade, or steal? What's your strategy? It's worth thinking about because the lessons from this game, they feel very, very real.